PD Beats here from Portraying, speaking to Caleb Emery about the film Break, going to be in theaters in April, and then it's going to be available on demand again in later in July. Welcome back to the show, man. It's so good to see you as always.
What's up, man? It's good to see you. I'm glad to be back.
Yeah, absolutely. 3 times now. I mean, do I have to get you like a mug or a hat or something? I mean, it's a big deal.
I feel like at this point, I should have a hat and a shirt on that says Pop Narrative on it.
Yeah, I know. And man, it's I think the first time we did it was like in the beginning of like the pandemic, right? Which feels like it was like 10 years ago, but it wasn't.
Yeah. Yeah, right. Right at the beginning of the pandemic, we started doing some interviews, and yes, 3, and just happy to be back.
Absolutely. One of the coolest things about storytelling is the ability to dive into worlds that audiences might not be familiar with. With this film Break, we're diving into the kind of the underground world of pool, of billiards, and all of that. What's that like from you from an acting storyteller perspective, kind of reading a script of a world that maybe not that many people are kind of familiar with? Is it exciting to get it out there? Are you thinking about that afterwards? Like, I'm just curious about that.
Yeah, it's a different story. I think when you think of sports movies or even gambling movies, you don't necessarily think of billiards being the forefront of those movies.
Yep.
So when I was reading the script for the first time, I was captivated because I don't know much about it. I like to go to bars and play pool, but I didn't know, the gambling side or how deep that went. And I mean, it was a real thing. I mean, it still probably is a real thing, where this, money gets involved and it gets deep and it gets dark and dangerous, especially in places like Detroit, where this movie takes place. So yeah, it's a cool, different twist than your typical, sports or betting kind of gambling movies.
I think we'll just have to wait and see, but fingers crossed if your character makes it in this film. We always talk about that.
Yeah, I've had a pretty good run here where I keep dying in these films. So I don't know if it's a good thing because people care about me or a bad thing because they want me off. But either way,
I mean, justice for Woody, right? I think we're always going to say that, right?
We'll keep justice for Woody. I mean, I think they should do a prequel. They should never do a sequel of that movie, just for the sole fact.
You said that last time when we talked about Hunters. You said that last time. You're like, I'm going to keep it going because that's the best. It's cool because these movies about sports aren't really about sports. Like, they're almost like movies about kind of figuring out things, crime, coming of age, these characters like Darren's character figuring out what he's gonna do, right? And then there just happens to be sports in there. Do you think about that at all? These movies that like have sports in it, but they're not really about sports. It's cool to think about a little bit.
Oh yeah, I mean, one of my favorites is Uncut Gems, Adam Sandler. Yep. I mean, he crushed it in that movie. Underappreciated, I believe, on his performance there. But that movie's about gambling and sports, and it's not really about sports at all, as much as it's about the gambling side of it.
Yeah.
The trouble he got into. And I think that could be a comparative to this story about how, with Darren's character, Darren Wise, first off, I'll go ahead and say, phenomenal actor. We met when early stages of this movie getting made. Mm-hmm. Bo, one of the producers, is good friends with Retta from Good Girls. She approached me with the script and we talked, and I got to meet Darren early, but Darren's a phenomenal actor, gives a great performance in this one. But yeah, we, with his character and getting into the dark side of this pool and the gambling side of things, it draws you in and the drama behind it. And pool is just kind of the catalyst of everything that's happening.
Absolutely. No, for sure. And very interesting because reading a script and then going and actually filming the thing, I think in a lot of ways are 2 different kind of experiences and journeys from a storytelling acting perspective, just because of the fact, Caleb, that so much happens before you go on camera. Things can change, mindsets about characters. So in a lot of ways, I feel like it's like 2 journeys from a storytelling perspective, like before and after. But a lot of people see it as one big journey with multiple steps. How do you kind of approach it specifically from an acting storyteller perspective?
Yeah, I think when I go through it, I mean, I read the script. I read it a couple of different times. And I try to read it, and my kind of journey is trying to read it in different perspectives of different characters and try to just understand what's happening. But I mean, like you said, so much changes from just reading it to filming it. So I don't try to preconceive too much of what I want to do while filming as much as I try to learn that with the director and the other actors, like in rehearsals and reads, and just kind of feel it out. I play that path as I'm going through that day. because your settings are different than maybe you picture in your head. The props might be different. You might want to do something that doesn't necessarily make sense for where the cameras have to be. So I try not to get too much in my head about what I want to do and just kind of let things naturally happen.
Absolutely.
But I build the character ahead of time of just kind of like keeping that mindset of where he's at and how he feels about the whole story.
How separate are your journeys, like your past projects versus like current projects? Like I'm talking about obviously different worlds, different characters. But like, do you bring things from Summer of '84, like Hunters or Good Girls, to break from a mindset kind of perspective, or are they all kind of separate? Like I always find that interesting.
Yeah, I think you pick from each character. I mean, you develop these things. It's like having I don't know, like a filing cabinet of stuff, and it's all in your head. So it's like when you're reading something and you read a character,
like a mixtape,
okay,
like a burnt mixtape, almost.
Yeah, you're like, oh, okay, that makes sense. And like you already have it in you, so you're like, it's there, and it could work for that part. So yeah, I think maybe not even like consciously you're doing that. Like you're starting to piece pieces together from other characters that happen to flow pretty well with one.
We become kind of friends and colleagues over the years. We talk about it all the time. I mean, you know how big of a horror movie fan I am. Is it pretty cool to be in like one of my favorites of all time? Because I'm just saying, like, I don't mess around with my horror films.
Oh, yeah. I mean, when we first talked, I remember we talked about the love you have for Summer of '84, Justice for Woody. And if anyone that's watching this hasn't seen Summer of '84, go watch it. You'll understand where the love comes from and the Justice for Woody. But yeah, man, it's an honor that it's one of your favorites. I know you're consistently watching films and you're consistently meeting people and interviewing, and for that to be one of your favorite films, especially in your favorite genre, it means a lot to me.
It's Justice for Woody, man. And like, I just, no, it's just because it's like the genre is just so hot right now. And it's like really exciting where you have opportunities. Like we're talking a little bit about it, right? It's underrated at times, under the radar. Some people I've introduced it to like didn't know about it, right? They watched it. It's become one of their favorites as well. You know what I mean? That's a thing. But it's like really exciting how big the genre is now that everyone's looking to watch new horror movies. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, and then like when did you start kind of noticing that? Like, it's so crazy right now how big these movies are, man.
I think when I signed on to do Summer of '84, I kind of did that like deep dive into Netflix and Amazon, trying to find those like pocket horror films that people don't talk about. You Google like top 10 secret horror films or something like that. There was one I remember, I think it was like It Follows or something like that.
So
it's
good.
just like such a good film. But I remember watching that leading up to it. I'm like, oh, there's like some hidden gems in this genre that people don't think about. And I was never a horror film fan growing up. I was too scared to watch it. And then being in Summer of '84, seeing the response at Sundance, seeing the response afterwards when it started releasing, worldwide, and the messages and the fans and all that kind of stuff, I was like, wow, this genre is like, it hits for people.
You're literally in a movie that literally is I Know What You Did Last Summer meets Stranger Things. And that's all I'm going to say. And if that doesn't sell you to go see it, what else will?
Yeah, I know. Exactly.
Does that make sense? Those two, that makes sense, right?
Yeah. Yeah, the Stranger Things hits the Friends in the '80s and all that stuff. Yeah, it's there.
Oh, man, it's so great. Is one of your favorite things about acting kind of diving in all these different worlds? I feel like that's one of the coolest things about it.
Yeah, I mean we're on here promoting Break. Like we said, it comes out April 26th in select theaters, and then it'll come out on streaming after that. But during filming Break, which was November of 2023. I was shooting another movie that's still being in the process of being finished, called Better Than a Shovel.
Yeah.
Better Than a Shovel is about a cannibal that works for the mafia. It's a comedy, dark comedy. So I was shooting this character that was a young 18-year-old cannibal kid that was born that way, which is where the comedy comes from. He was born a cannibal, and his parents don't know what to do. And I was also shooting Break, which my character Cheese is like this drug dealer, Detroit. He's a good friend to Eli, Darren Wise's character, but ultimately, deep down he lives in like kind of a garage and he sells drugs and that's what he does. thinks he's from 8 Mile. Like that's his thing. So shooting both those characters at the same time, my friends always talk because like one day I'd be going and shooting this like funny comedy, and the next day I'd be shooting like this dark drama.
So different, right? Yeah.
And it was so different, and like talking about characters and like trying to put them in different like boxes for you to go film. I mean, it was literally like one day here, 2 days here, next day there, like so just very different characters. But that's the part that I love. Like I love being that busy first off, but I love the aspect of like having to keep that mind rolling of being like, all right, back to the comedy, back to the like subtle comedy thing here, or back to the dark drama part here.
100%. And Break is a lot of fun, man. I loved it, and it's just I feel like I get really invested in these like stories of these characters that are lost, and in a lot of ways don't realize they're lost. If you think about that a little bit, right?
Yeah.
Like you're watching these movies about these guys trying to figure things out, and these characters going through life, and I'm wondering if that's like, I mean, I think Darren is the one that really kind of reflects this, but your character too in a lot of ways, like your character Cheese and everything, like selling drugs, trying to dig it day by day and everything. Is it more fun or challenging to play lost characters because of what I just said? Like they don't know they're lost when you're playing them, right?
Yeah, I was just talking about that the other day about my character in Good Girls is very similar. Like he plays that naive, like kind of spacey, like doesn't know what's going on ever. I mean, I let that grocery store in Good Girls get robbed like 6 times. I was a security guard and I didn't do my job. So I think when you're playing, especially in a drama, and you're playing this character that is sincere and isn't like the loving and nice character, but also like kind of naive in a lot of senses, it's different. And I think it goes back to what we were talking about with the this character study.
Yeah.
And how like when you're diving into a script, you're learning about your character. There's only so much I'm allowed to do in my head before I get there, because my character has to learn things as it goes. Like he has to be vulnerable to like the situation. It has to be very much so like, oh, like I didn't know. Like even Booty Hole from Hunters was very similar. Like my character there, he was very like naive to a sense of what was really going on.
Mm-hmm.
And I think in a way I try to keep it that way when I'm even studying. Like I'm just kind of like, okay, like it is what it is. Like let's just go through it and like kind of learn it as it comes. So then you build by the end of the movie, you have more of a sense of like pride when it comes to it.
Absolutely. And you mentioned it, Break going to be available in select theaters April 26th, so they can really check that out in the US. Caleb, it's always great chatting with you, man. Thank you so much for coming back on the show.
Yeah, man, I appreciate it anytime.
Yeah. So we mentioned that. Your Instagram account is just your name if people want to keep up to date with everything, right?
Yeah. All my handles are just Caleb Emery. Keep up with me on Instagram. It's probably the best. I'm the most active there.
And go watch Summer of '84 if you haven't.
Yeah, check out Petey's fave, Summer of '84.
Justice for Woody.
Get that one on there. Yeah.
Justice for Woody. I think we're going to end that every time we talk. Well, this has been Pop Turd. YouTube.com/PopTurd. Previous episodes. You can catch Caleb and Break in select theaters in the US April 26th. Until next time, this is Caleb and Petey Beats signing off.
Thank you for tuning in to Popturnative. Make sure to check out our past episodes of Popturnative on YouTube.
This has been an Autograph Communications production.